If you are getting excited about what you're hearing tonight and there's something that you feel like you really want to advocate for, a great way to do that is by joining the Charlotte Regional Transportation Coalition. And both Jerry and Patricia are members of the coalition steering committee, and they put a lot of time and energy into helping to make that coalition really be based in the community and really rooted in the neighborhoods that need transportation choices, which is all of them. And our advocacy manager is a staff person who coordinates the coalition. So you can talk to any of those folks if you want to get more involved, or you can also email. So I just want to give most of our time tonight to our speakers, but just to kind of bring us back to where we've been for the past few weeks. The first week we talked about SMART, which is all about building communities in such a way that we can walk or ride bikes or ride public transit to meet more of our daily needs. And that requires not only building in a smart way so that all the different places we need to go in a typical day aren't spread so far apart that we have to get in our cars even for those short trips, but it's also about making sure that we have the transportation choices, both the vehicles, whether that's people having access to bikes or people having buses that come by frequently. It's also about having the infrastructure on the ground, those sidewalks, the signalized crosswalks, the bus and bike lanes in areas where it makes sense. So all of these elements have to work together so that we can achieve the vision that Charlotte has set out for 2040. If we just kind of grow in a haphazard way, this is not going to be a sustainable community. And the alternative is really ugly. It would be having to widen roads and really double our road capacity by 2040, which is expensive and would have huge impacts on the environment, air quality, climate change. Not to mention it would leave the large percentage of our population that doesn't drive a car or will not be able to drive a car due to age or disability out of access to opportunities. So mobility is a critical element of achieving the vision for Charlotte's future. And again, this is a kind of a stylized image of what a complete street could look like. Obviously, not every street is going to look exactly the same, but streets are for everyone. They're our largest shared public space. But when we look at how streets were designed in the past, almost all of the space on them was given to people in cars with very little consideration for where people can safely ride bikes and walk and ride public transit and just even interact with other folks on the street. So fortunately, we have great people working at CATS and Charlotte DOT who are trying to correct some of the errors that were made in the past and some of the omissions. So we're really excited to have them with us tonight and eager to learn more about what they're doing. So I'd like to invite Ed McKinney from Charlotte Department of Transportation up to talk more about mobility and CDOT does.
Yeah, right. The laser alarm, right? It's a hard act to follow. You sort of describe transportation in a nutshell. I was warned by the folks at my table that I think the last presentations we've been trying to cover too much. Short period of time. I know it's probably a lot tonight. It's about just good discussion. So I'll try to be quick. And, Jason and I have done this show many times. It'll be fun to just share what we're doing. Conversation about where we're heading with mobility. So again, I'm Ed McKinney with the City of Charlotte. I've actually recently moved to our manager's office to sort of coordinate and cross kind of connections about all things mobility. So it's just an example of how important it is now for the city and what we're embarking over the next few years to really make sure that everything we're doing, the ways we're investing, the ways we're growing, are tied to our vision and really thoughtful about how we move through our city. I start with this because, when you get down to it, what we're trying to do as a city is to build kind of a political place that is all about upward mobility, making our residents, the people that live in Charlotte, successful. That's really about where you work, and how do you get connected to those things. So for the city council, the mayor, and our city manager's office, it's really about making sure that everything we do, it's not just about one transportation project, it's not just about one rezoning or a specific land use decision. It's about making sure everything we do is about connecting people in affordable, equitable ways how they move through the city, how they get to where they live and where they work. I'll talk a little bit about the Charlotte Department of Transportation does. Again, now that I'm in the city manager's office, I have a broader view. I spent the last few years in the transportation department, so I have a pretty good sense of how it works. And it was a great way for me to learn sort of on the ground and in the organization about the sort of the mechanics and the operations of the transportation department. So the Charlotte Department of Transportation does everything from the long range planning, thinking about the kind of investment in roads that we need to build, planning for that, working with our transit agency and thinking about how that, what those big projects are long term. But we also do a lot of nitty gritty things. We maintain all the roads that you see. We resurface them. We operate all the signals that are out there. So we've got most of our signals, 2/3 of the department is the field people, all of us, the staff and the team that works on the streets every day, every night, responds to emergencies, making sure our signals are working, and thinking about the operations of our infrastructure. As Meg described, our right of way and our roads are one of our biggest space. So there's a lot of work that goes on just to make sure our system runs. So we have a big vision, a big mobility vision. And it's all about this notion that what we're trying to do is connect everything from economic development, affordable housing, sustainability, land use and development. It really tied to the growth of Charlotte. Almost everybody at my table is relatively new to Charlotte, which is just a great example of the growth that's happening and all the people that are attracted to being in Charlotte because of our relatively affordable quality of life, the opportunities for jobs and growth. And it's got a great infrastructure, social, economic infrastructure for success in our city. But as you know, we're growing very, very fast. Challenges around that, particularly around mobility, are ever more important and sort of ever top of mind of our city council, our citizens. I know you've talked about Meg mentioned this comprehensive plan. If you were here, I guess last week, you talked a great deal about the land use and the big vision of our comprehensive plan. Taking a step back, it was really important, and we're at a unique time. This comprehensive plan was the start and the foundation for a whole series of planning and regulatory leaps that the city has done in just a few times. Really unprecedented, the scale and the breadth of everything we've done. So comprehensive plan you know about. The Unified Development Ordinance is all the rules and regulations that put the comprehensive plan into place. The policy map is the land use piece. Again, if you were here last night or last week, we talked about that. We have a strategic energy action plan, which is about sustainability. And then what I'll talk about is our strategic mobility plan. The point of this is just to describe that these things have built together. So our strategic mobility plan is really a growth and a sort of implementation piece of the comprehensive plan. So we rethought what we're doing to make sure it was aligned to all the broad goals of the comprehensive plan so that the decisions we make on mobility are taken into vision of the community. As Meg was describing again, what we do is not about cars solely, right? It's really about moving people, whether you're in a car, whether you're in a bus, on a bike, etc. And so we view it holistically, and we are careful about making sure that the way we design streets, the way we transfer past design of our streets are designed to sort of balance and sometimes prioritize other roads over others to make sure that we're moving in a safe way. County is a big part of this. I think last time we was here to talk a little bit about the parks and their greenway master plan. I mentioned that again because even the greenway system is part of how we think about connecting throughout our city. I think one of our friends tonight came and rode the bike on the Cross-Charlotte Trail. So it's a great example that it's not purely a recreation piece, it's part of our infrastructure of how we move. So how do we do that? Just to give you a little bit of details of what it means and all the components of how we think from a transportation standpoint and a public investment standpoint, how we should be investing in our right-of-way and our road infrastructure. And again, as was mentioned, this notion that our right-of-ways are not just roads. Really, it's a public utility. How we use it, how we design it, is really connected to vision for our city. So some cases it's about pedestrians and making sure that we've got the right sidewalk and bike infrastructure, making sure our signals operate and utilizing the new technology of connecting our signal system to advanced infrastructure into vehicles, making sure we've got the little things like pedestrian crossings, connecting to things like mobility hubs and transit that Jason will talk about in a minute. The sort of the detail, the sort of gist of the slide is to sort of demonstrate that there's a complex ecosystem of all the pieces and parts of our right-of-way and our roads. And really what we try to do as a city and as a public agency around transit is making sure that we design that system to move people in all sorts of ways and safely and equitably. I'm just going to run through really quickly what that means in Charlotte, some very specific examples, with the notion that there are lots of little things we do. There are bigger things that we do, but collectively, it demonstrates the kind of range of infrastructure with the goals behind it in terms of moving people, again, safely and equitably. So, simple things. We're doing lots across our city to just add pedestrian crossings, safe crossings that are signalized, where you can get across some of our big streets, some of our active streets in a more safe way. If you lived here for a long time or you knew, you kind of understand that still lots of suburban places where there are not many blocks, not many intersections, so getting across some of our streets is a growing concern, particularly in this case, it's adjacent to a school. So sure, and sort of adding and sort of reinventing and retrofitting our streets to make them, even in small ways, pedestrian friendly. Street lighting is a big thing. Matt talked a little bit earlier tonight from the Far East standpoint. Lots of places in our city have 2-lane rural roads with no lighting on them. So you're almost in sort of an ex-urban condition, but you've got neighborhoods where people walk and feel safe. And so we've got a lot of places where we're just putting in street lights to give the build the safe kind of front structure of our streets. There's lots of gaps, lots of kind of needs around it to demonstrate the notion of opportunities ahead of us. Many of you are probably familiar, and I know St. Charlotte was a big partner in the momentum and the prioritization of the kind of investment we made in Uptown. Great example of retrofitting the street, taking some of the capacity around vehicles to create capacity around our bike infrastructure. Complete Street, so this is sort of an east area road project that's still in the planning phases, but it's funded and we'll be out there doing that shortly, which is again just taking one of our existing roads, transforming it in a way, in this case with buffered bike lanes, expanded and complete sidewalks, retrofitting a suburban condition to be the vision that we want for safe mobility for all modes. Again, the thing I want to emphasize here is hundreds of miles of streets and roads that aren't like this. One of our biggest challenges is prioritizing and focusing on the places that we can make this kind of transformation with the limited resources and funding that we have available. We do bigger things. This is a project down in the Palatine area. So this is completely new, reinvented intersection design, roundabouts here, again, with the notion that there are ways that we can transform our infrastructure, even the intersection design, to be more safe, more connected, and more multimodal. New connections. Again, this idea that we've got suburban places with little connected infrastructure, few streets connections. And so here's a couple of examples where just building and enhancing the bridge crossing. This is across the bottom one is across Little Sugar Creek. The top one is up in this area, parts of the city area across 85. So, the notion here is new connections across barriers, but they're all multimodal. So we're building those connections, not just around vehicles, but around pedestrians and bike infrastructure every time we do that. A great example, and if you're familiar with the Prosperity Village area, that was a great partnership with the state, rethinking an interchange on 485. That's the whole that what you see in the foreground is essentially an interchange that was designed in a way that built network. It's a series of roundabouts that connect you to the off-ramps and on-ramps of 485, but then built the kind of urban structure of the community and activity center there. So new streets, new blocks, expanded the capacity of those roads in a series of roads. So we're not building one single interchange. If you can envision what a typical suburban interchange looks and feels like, that's an interchange for 485, but built in a completely way that's more walkable, more bikeable, and building to the vision of growth and development in a walkable urban center and growing activity center in the Prosperity Village area. Similar, we're doing that kind of thing. This is down in Valentine. You're familiar with the Valentine area. This reimagining the Valentine suburban office park. Again, taking a suburban place and beginning to think about its intensification, the mixed use, building new streets and blocks. This is a great example of coordinating transit. The redevelopment of this area is protecting the extension of the Blue Line transit. So someday in this area, you'll have a new station and access to the Blue Line with new development, mixed use, more intense, putting people where we want them, and then building both the road, bike, pedestrian, and transit infrastructure to support that growth long term. So how do we address the challenge? Let's talk a little bit about what we've been doing since our mobility plan, building on the comprehensive plan, and then how do we invest in all the things that I'm talking about? So over the last year or so, we've been working with council to document all of our needs and opportunities. We've got some summary things that sort of describe it, district to district, having detailed conversations with our city council. That number up there, 2,000, sort of an order of magnitude representation of all the things that we could do. As I mentioned, all the pedestrian crossings like the ones I've showed you, street lighting around our corridors, sidewalk apps, rebuilding complete streets. Add all of that up across our city, we've got thousands of challenges because we simply don't have all of them that take to build that. So what we've been working now is how do we prioritize? How do we focus that growth and development and provide the infrastructure to support it consistent with the comprehensive plan? So we've been thinking about how you prioritize, looking in strategic areas where if you do a combination and package of sidewalks, pedestrian crossings, transit, supporting the things that CATS is doing around transit, we concentrate and sort of focus that kind of investment in key areas where our centers are, where our mobility needs are, with the goal that with the limited resources that we can have real impact in some key places throughout the city. Can't quite see all the details of the slide, but I think one of the questions that was raised is how can you all be engaged? We're in the process into next year. I think you've heard about the community area planning process. So we're taking this kind of infrastructure thinking and the prioritization and identification of projects. We'll be working hand in hand with the planning department in their community area plan process to marry those two things together. So as there's community engagement around the area plans, we'll have the same conversation around infrastructure. So I would just encourage you, if you're interested, passionate, want to be engaged about these issues, the best way to do that over the next year is to be really connected to the area plan process to help us think through the infrastructure and land use connection. I'll sort of lead with this and maybe sort of tease up Jason and talk about transit. There's a Jason will talk about this from a more regional perspective, particularly around transit, but it's connected to all the things we as a city are doing, but all of the towns in Mecklenburg County, our regional agencies, CATS being probably one of the most important ones. We got to do all this together. So even if we in Charlotte do the kinds of things I'm talking about, it still doesn't work if it's not connected with the vision that CATS has for transit. It doesn't work if it's not connected to the vision that CATS has around green space. It doesn't work if we're not connected to all the towns and places and municipalities, both in the county and outside of our county. So the point is we need to focus on our growth and development in Charlotte, provide the right infrastructure from a mobility standpoint, but then really be partners in a more broader regional effort, big potential around funding that maybe Jason will allude to. But with that, I'll sort of throw to Jason and give the picture of transit, both in Charlotte and a little bit more regional.